After our wedding, we went home together. My heart was full of joy. I thought the night would be special, just like we had always dreamed. My husband went to the bathroom to freshen up, so I decided to surprise him. I wrapped a towel around myself and quietly walked to the bathroom. I wanted to have a romantic moment with him, but when I opened the bathroom door, I was shocked. He immediately yelled at me, "Get out! Why didn't you knock before coming in?" His voice was so sharp that I froze. I couldn't believe it. Was I supposed to knock before entering my own husband's bathroom? I had never imagined he would react like that, especially on our wedding night. He walked out of the bathroom, leaving me standing there, confused and hurt. I went in, freshened up quickly, and then lay on our matrimonial bed. I put on special lingerie I had bought just for that night, hoping he would notice me and things would go back to normal. I positioned myself on the bed, trying to look beautiful for him, waiting for him to join me. But he didn't even glance my way. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, pressing his phone. I reached out to touch him, thinking maybe he just needed a little nudge to get in the mood, but he sighed and said, "I'm tired. Give me some time to rest." I was shocked. This was supposed to be our special night, the one we had been planning for during the 12 months we dated. He always said no to any intimacy before marriage. He would tell me it was against his beliefs and that he wanted to wait until we were married. Now, here we were, on our wedding night, and he was saying he was tired. I sat at the edge of the bed, feeling disappointed. I tried different ways to catch his attention, but nothing worked. He didn't even notice me. A few moments later, his phone rang. He picked it up, and after a short conversation, he said, "I'm coming now." I stared at him in disbelief. "Where are you going?" I asked. "A business partner just called. I need to meet them," he said, getting up from the bed. "On your wedding day?" I asked, feeling hurt. "When will you be back?" He shrugged. "I don't know yet," he said, and before I could ask him to stay, he was already out the door. I lay back on the bed, feeling lonely and upset. How could he leave me alone on our wedding night? I didn't even lock the door, thinking he would come back soon. But as time passed, I started to feel more and more alone. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. I froze, not sure who it could be. The door slowly opened, and to my shock, my husband's elder brother stood there, wearing only boxers. My heart raced. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice shaking. He smiled and stepped inside. "Where's your husband?" he asked, his eyes scanning the room. "He went out for a business meeting," I replied nervously. "That's fine," he said casually, taking a few steps closer. I felt my stomach twist. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "I came to keep you company," he said, still walking closer. "You must be lonely since your husband isn't around." My heart pounded in my chest. "No, I'm fine," I said quickly. "He'll be back soon." He smiled again, but this time it didn't feel friendly. "Your husband isn't coming back anytime soon," he said. "Let me keep you busy until he gets back." Fear gripped me. "No," I said, my voice louder now. "I don't need company. Please leave." He stopped, his smile fading. He could see I was getting upset. After a tense moment, he finally turned and left the room, closing the door behind him. I rushed to lock the door, my hands shaking. My heart was racing in fear. I lay back down on the bed, but I couldn't sleep. I was too scared. I stayed awake all night, waiting for my husband to return, but he never came back. The next morning, I felt completely lost. What had happened to my wedding night? Why was everything turning into a nightmare? In the morning, my husband finally returned home. He looked tired, and there was a hint of guilt on his face. He came over to me and said, "I'm sorry. I couldn't make it back after the business meeting last night." I didn't say much, even though my heart was full of anger and fear. I wasn't just upset because he left me alone on our wedding night. What really scared me was what happened with his older brother. Should I tell him about it? What if he didn't believe me? Or what if they started fighting because of me? I convinced myself that maybe his brother was just drunk from the wedding and didn't mean anything by it. I tried to push the memory away. That day was supposed to be our honeymoon. I wanted to forget what happened and focus on us. I softly asked him, "Do you still remember today's our honeymoon?" "Oh, I almost forgot," he said with a small laugh. "Okay, let me go tell my brother to get ready so we can all go." My heart stopped. "Your brother? Why would he come? It's our honeymoon. We're supposed to be alone," I said, my voice rising with panic. "It's fine. He can come along to escort us," he insisted casually. I felt my frustration rising. "No, this is our special time. We need to be alone," I protested. We started arguing, and I could feel the tension between us growing. After a lot of back and forth, he finally agreed. "Okay, fine. We'll go just the two of us," he said, sounding annoyed. I was relieved but still worried about everything that had happened. We packed our things and set out for our honeymoon. The place we went to was beautiful, just like a fairy tale. The hotel was surrounded by tall palm trees swaying gently in the breeze, and there was a shimmering blue pool that sparkled in the sunlight. Our room was decorated with soft red rose petals all over the bed, and the air smelled sweet, like fresh flowers. From the windows, we could see a peaceful beach where the waves gently kissed the shore. It was like a dream come true. We had a nice meal together, and for a moment, I felt like everything was going to be okay. I started to feel hopeful again. After dinner, we decided to freshen up. My husband went to shower first. After a while, I thought I could surprise him again, so I tied a towel around myself and walked toward the bathroom, hoping we could share a romantic moment in the shower together. But when I tried to open the door, it was locked. I knocked softly. "Can I come in?" I asked. "No. Wait until I'm done," he replied from inside. I felt a sharp disappointment. I tried to explain how nice it would be if we bathed together, but he refused again. I sighed and waited for my turn, feeling a bit sad. When I was finally done freshening up and came out of the bathroom, I saw him sitting on the bed, fully dressed. He was already on his phone again. I didn't want to let the mood get ruined, so I walked up to him, gently took off his shirt, and kissed him softly on the lips. I ran my hands over his chest, trying to get closer to him. For a brief moment, I thought we were finally going to have that special moment. But then, something strange happened. Every time I tried to touch him below his waist, he quickly pushed my hands away. My heart sank. I felt confused and hurt. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying not to sound too upset. He didn't answer directly, just looked away. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "How are we supposed to make babies if you're acting like this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I'm not ready for a baby right now," he said coldly. His words felt like a slap in the face. "Then why did you marry me?" I snapped, feeling anger rising in my chest. The rest of the night was awful. He didn't touch me again. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling lonelier than ever. I kept waiting for him to hold me, but all I heard was his soft snoring as he slept peacefully beside me, while I lay awake in the darkness, feeling like my heart was breaking. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, and it scared me. The honeymoon was nothing like I dreamed it would be. No loving moments, no closeness. Instead, it was filled with distance and confusion. The next morning, we packed up and returned home. I was angry, heartbroken, and confused. Something felt terribly wrong, but I didn't know what. I had no one to talk to, and the feelings of loneliness were starting to crush me like a heavy weight. Days turned into weeks, and still my husband didn't touch me. He acted distant, like I was invisible. Every time I tried to get close, he pulled away, and it hurt more each time. I started to feel like a stranger in my own marriage, trapped in a life I couldn't understand. One morning, as my husband got ready for work, I sat at the edge of the bed, my heart sinking. I wanted to talk to him, to ask him what was wrong, but I was scared. What if he didn't have an answer? Or worse, what if the answer broke my heart even more? I felt so alone. A few minutes after my husband left for work, I sat there, trying to hold back my tears. That's when I heard footsteps. His older brother suddenly walked into the room. I looked up, surprised to see him. "Do you need anything?" he asked casually. I shook my head. "No, I'm fine," I said, hoping he would leave. But he didn't. Instead, he sat down beside me, much too close. I could feel the heat of his body, and it made me uncomfortable. His hand moved slowly toward my leg, and I quickly pushed it away, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice shaky with fear. He gave me a sly smile, one that sent chills down my spine. "I just want to make you feel like a woman," he whispered. I froze in shock. My stomach twisted in knots. "I'm your brother's wife," I said, my voice louder now, trying to sound strong even though I felt weak. "It doesn't matter," he said, leaning closer, his breath warm against my skin. I felt the room spin. "But you're married too. You have kids," I reminded him, desperate to make him, "That doesn't matter either." He replied coldly, his eyes dark with something I didn't understand. It terrified me. Before I could move, he lunged at me, grabbing my arms and trying to Panic shot through my body like lightning. I screamed, my voice piercing the air as I struggled to push him away. My heart raced, and my chest felt tight with fear. With all my strength, I shoved him off and bolted from the room, my legs shaking as I ran down the hallway. I could hardly breathe. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't stop until I reached another room. I slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. Inside, I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. My whole body trembled, and I could barely catch my breath. I had never been so scared in my life. The weight of what had just happened crashed down on me like a wave, and I didn't know what to do. The man who was supposed to protect me had become my worst nightmare. I stayed in that room for what felt like hours, too afraid to come out, wondering if this would ever end, and whether I would ever feel safe again. When my husband came home later that day, I couldn't hold it in anymore. My hands were trembling, my heart pounding in my chest as I sat him down and told him everything. Every horrible detail of how his brother had tried to hurt me. I could barely get the words out, but I needed him to know. I watched his face closely, hoping to see anger, shock, or even concern. But what I got made my blood run cold. He looked at me, calm as ever, and said, "There's nothing wrong with that. My brother and I share everything." I stared at him, my mind reeling in disbelief. Was he serious? Was this some kind of twisted joke? My stomach churned as the weight of his words sank in. "Are you even listening to yourself?" I shouted, my voice trembling with rage and pain. "He's your brother, and I'm your wife. How can you say that?" Tears blurred my vision, and the room felt like it was closing in on me. The betrayal I felt was like a knife twisting in my chest. "Are you even a man?" I spat out, my anger spilling over. "How could you let this happen? How could you say it's okay?" Suddenly, he seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. He jumped up, his hands outstretched, trying to calm me down. "I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't mean it like that. Please, don't go." But I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, my body shaking with fury. I grabbed my suitcase and started throwing clothes into it, my hands moving faster and faster as my emotions spiraled out of control. "Please," he begged, reaching for me. "Don't leave." I stopped, turning to face him, my voice cold and full of hurt. "The only way I'm staying is if you make love to me right now," I demanded, my eyes locked on his. His face went pale. He froze in place, his eyes wide with fear. Slowly, he looked down at the floor, avoiding my gaze. I can't," he whispered. "Why not?" I screamed, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Why won't you touch me? What's wrong with you?" There was a long, painful silence. Finally, he spoke, his voice shaking. "I don't know how to tell you this," he whispered, his eyes full of sadness. My heart stopped. I watched as he slowly started unbuttoning his shirt, his hands trembling. He undressed piece by piece until he stood there, completely exposed. And then I saw it. Or rather, I didn't see it. My knees buckled and I gasped, covering my mouth with my hands. What is this?" I cried, tears streaming down my face, my voice cracking with disbelief and sorrow. He looked at me, broken, tears spilling from his own eyes. "I was born this way," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry. I knew you wouldn't marry me if I told you." I stumbled back, shaking my head, unable to process what he was saying. You lied to me," I sobbed. "Why didn't you tell me? You made me believe we could have a normal life." "I'm sorry," he whispered again, his voice filled with regret. But sorry wasn't enough. Nothing could fix the pain I was feeling. I collapsed onto the bed, burying my face in my hands, my sobs echoing through the room. Everything I thought I knew had shattered, leaving me in a world that felt empty and full of lies. The man I had loved was now a stranger, and I didn't know how to make sense of the broken pieces of my heart. Very early in the morning, I packed my bags, my heart feeling as heavy as a stone, and my eyes swollen from crying all night. The pain of betrayal still fresh. I couldn't bear to stay another day with a man who had lied to me, who had hidden such a huge secret. My husband knelt on the floor, his face wet with tears as he begged me not to go. "Please, don't go," he pleaded, reaching out to hold my hand, his voice shaky and full of regret. But I couldn't stay. I was too hurt, too broken inside. My hands trembled as I pushed his hand away, my own tears falling silently. "I can't stay," I whispered, my voice weak and full of pain. With my bags in hand, I stepped out of the house, each step feeling heavier than the last. Tears flowed down my cheeks as I walked away, feeling like my world had completely fallen apart. When I finally reached my parents' house, I was drained. My parents were sitting in the living room, their faces turning from calm to worry the moment they saw me standing there, with my bags and tears streaming down my face. "What happened?" my mother asked in a soft voice, rushing over to me, her arms wrapping around me like a warm blanket. I collapsed into her embrace, sobbing uncontrollably, barely able to get the words out. He doesn't have a manhood," I choked out between my sobs. "He lied to me. He kept it from me." My mother's face drained of color as she gasped, holding me tighter, trying to comfort me. But my father, his reaction was different. His face turned red with rage, and he slammed his fist on the table so hard it made me jump. "I told you not to marry that man," he shouted, his voice booming like thunder in the small room. "I warned you, but no, you didn't listen. You followed your heart, and now look where it's gotten you." His words cut me deeply, making me feel even more ashamed. I had married for love, but now everything had crumbled. My father had wanted me to marry an old, wealthy man who had offered to clear my father's debt if I agreed to marry him. But I had refused. I couldn't imagine being with someone I didn't love, someone who was so much older than me. "You're not staying here," my father roared, his eyes burning with anger. "Go back to your husband." My mother tried to calm him down, her voice soft and pleading. "Please let her stay a while. She's been through enough." But my father was stubborn. "No, she made her choice, and now she must live with it." Tears streamed down my face as I listened to my father's harsh words. I felt crushed, like the whole world was against me. The next morning, before I had even fully opened my eyes, my father stormed into my room. Without a word, he grabbed my bags and threw them outside the house. "Go back to your husband!" he bellowed. My mother's cries filled the air as she begged him to stop, but it was no use. I picked up my bags, my body shaking with humiliation and defeat. There was nowhere else for me to go. I had no choice but to return. With my head hung low, I walked back to my husband's house, feeling completely lost and ashamed. When I arrived, he said nothing. He just looked at me with cold, empty eyes, as if I didn't matter anymore. I quietly unpacked my bags, feeling trapped, hopeless, and more alone than ever before. That night, something happened that I never expected. My husband came home late, and this time his older brother was with him. The moment I saw his brother's face, fear twisted inside me, making my stomach turn. I backed away, trembling as they both walked toward me. My husband's voice was calm, too calm, and it sent chills down my spine. "It's time for you to give me a baby," he said, his eyes cold and distant. My heart stopped. I froze, my body trembling as I realized what he meant. I froze, my whole body turning cold like ice. My husband's brother gave me a wicked smile that made my heart pound with fear. "Take off your clothes."